I'm sitting on the 7 train, and just left Court Square, and we're about to go underground to get to where the 7 train goes back underground and becomes a subway again in Queens. And that last sweeping turn, you pass this giant old building covered in graffiti. It's called 5 Points. There's a huge graffiti mecca in New York City where anybody who does tags in New York goes there and puts them, if they're allowed to, puts their tag on this building. And the sun is shining. It's around noon, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I'm on the train with my mother-in-law, Linda, and she loves graffiti. She's not your normal mother-in-law. And she's looking at the building. She's like, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, all right, man, I wish maybe we should have gotten out and looked at this. Because, like, when I have friends coming in from out of town, I hang out with them. Like, usually I take them to a bar, or like maybe like we get high and go hang out in the village or something. Like, this is my mother-in-law. I can't do that. It's all right. So it's Halloween. It's October 31st, 2007, and my wife and I had just moved to New York, 8 months before, and her mom, Linda, lives in Connecticut. And tonight is, after a whole series of tours, this is the return night of the reunited Police playing at Madison Square Garden. The actual Police. So you never thought that they would do it, but I guess when they make enough money, anybody can do anything. So they got back together. Linda loves music so much. Sarah used to tell me that when she was growing up, there was nothing but rock and roll playing in the house. The Pretenders and the Faces and the Police, and it was always rock and roll in the house. So Linda got on the train and came down, and they're going to go tonight to go see the Police. But between noon when she gets there and 8 o'clock when the show starts, my wife has a job, which I'm glad she does. It keeps me in the lifestyle I'm accustomed to. But like, now I gotta show my mother-in-law around. Like, I've known Linda for a long time. Sarah and I started dating in 1997, and Linda and I know each other real well. We've only had a couple arguments over the years, but it's still my mother-in-law. You know what I mean? No matter how cool your mother-in-law is, you don't want to hang out with them for 8 hours, right? It's just you just don't want to. So I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do. So I just get on the train. I was like, well, I guess we'll figure it out. So we take the 7 train, and it goes underground and goes into Manhattan, and stops at the terminus, which is Times Square. And we get out into the sea of people, and we go up the escalator and up the steps, 41st Street, where the giant Red Lobster is. New York's famous Red Lobster. Like, why would you go? There's any place in the world. Why would you go to Red Lobster in the middle of Times Square? Because you're an idiot. And so we walk through Times Square. I want to show her my favorite part of the city. It's on 46th Street and Broadway. When you approach 46th Street and Broadway, in the middle of the hellmouth of Times Square, there's a big, large metal grate about the size of the stage. And as you get closer to it, there's a droning sound. There's a hum. And as you walk onto the grate, first you stay to the side of the grate, and you watch people walk over the grate. And you see them as they walk over the grate, they stop for a second, and they keep going. And this drone, this hum, as you walk closer, it gets louder and louder, until if you stand right on the sweet spot, right in the middle of Times Square, in the center of the universe, there's no sound but that white noise. And in the middle of the loudest, busiest place in the world, you're just alone in this like cocoon of silence. And it's my favorite place in the city. And I know Linda's gonna love it, because I know that she's got the same kind of active asshole brain that I do, and like the show enjoy it. And we stand there for about 10 minutes, just not saying a word, just looking at everything around us and in our own silence, and it's beautiful. And so now, all right, that's done. Now what do we do? So I, walk down 42nd Street. I'm like, well, I'll show her Bryant Park. It's by the library. It's a beautiful lawn. As we're on our way over there, there's this guy with a big sign that says Pots and Pans, and he's got pots and pans and cookie sheets, and he's playing drums, and he's just like going crazy. It's like this little skinny guy, and he looks like the drums are extensions of his hands and his body and his soul, and he's just playing the world's longest John Bonham drum solo, but not on drums, on pots and pans. And Linda's fixated, and she stands there, and she goes to give him $20. I'm like, you don't get $1, give him $1. But it's not her money, it's her husband Pepe's money. So like, give him 40 then. So she gives them the money, and we go over to Bryant Park, and the lawn is closed off for the season because idiots have gone over there to watch movies all summer on the lawn in the city, and so now they reseeded it, and we can't stand or lay on the grass. So I'm like, well, now I really want to lay on some grass, man. So let's walk down south. We go and head over to Broadway, and we start heading down south. And while we're on our way, she's getting phone calls from Peppy, who she's in the process of having yet another separation with. And I'm like, Jesus, like, let it go. And she's trying to buy another house with Peppy's money so she can live in it. It's a whole mess. This guy, his name's Peppy, makes jewelry for Renaissance fairs. There's a whole cabal of these Renaissance fair people. It's fucking bonkers. People that make amulets for a living. It just, I'm sure there's 3 or 4 of you here. This is Maine. But just like, I don't mean no offense, but like you're, weirdos. Like, and the sun is shining. There's not a cloud in the sky. There are days in your life. There are certain days that just stand out. Your life is a series of usually a day that knocks you on your ass, but sometimes there are these days that just lift you up. And this is one of them. It's in the story of my life. This is one day that is maybe right up there in the most beautiful days of my life. And we're walking down Broadway in the sun, and it's not hot, and it's beautiful, and there's excitement in the air, and Linda ducks into a bodega and buys a pack of Virginia Slims, because when people are around me, they feel like they can give into their vices. They feel like it's okay. They curse more than they normally would. They drink more. They do all kinds of stuff around me because I guess, why would I'm fun? So we're walk. Plus, I also didn't want to bum any more of my cigarettes to her. So. We get down to, we keep walking, we walk through Herald Square on 34th Street, and there's these elaborate owl sculptures and all these little things I'm pointing out to her throughout the chaos of Herald Square, where New York City has its version of a mall, which is weird if you think about it, but it's an actual mall like you would have anywhere in the world, but it's in Manhattan, and it's really bizarre and overpriced, and there's stupid teenagers walking around just like every mall everywhere. And we bypass the mall, and we walk down to one of my favorite parks in New York, Madison Square Park. It's on 23rd Street, and in the middle there's a big oval lawn, and that's even a better lawn than Bryant Park. And every summer into the late fall, there's some kind of art installation there. In 2007, it's this aluminum tree. So there's 2 giant tree trunks on either side of the oval, and they reach way up to the sky, and the branches make an arch until they touch in the center. And you lay down underneath this gleaming aluminum tree, and you look up through the sky, and it's broken up by this gleaming beacon of reflection and light, and it's gorgeous. And we're looking up at the sky, and she's getting phone calls, and I say, Linda, I'm glad you're leaving Peppy because he's an asshole. And she goes, you know what? I'm glad you said that because no one ever has the balls to say that to me. And I'm like, well, I guess I do then. But I don't have the balls. There's something that I need to tell her. I've been needing to tell her for a while, and I know today's got to be the day that I got to do it. But I don't know if I can, and I'm just nervous. And she gets more phone calls, and it's realtors, and it's Peppy, and it's lawyers, and it's all this, and it's driving me nuts and her nuts until eventually I just take her phone and I turn it off. I put it in my pocket. I was like, don't worry, it'll take care of itself. Let's enjoy the day. And she takes a breath and breathes it out, and we get up and we walk south. And we get down to Union Square, and the Union Square Green Market is running, and there's like apples this big, and people selling fresh meat and butter and dairy and stuff, all this outrageously overpriced produce in the middle of New York City, and people selling their handmade stuff. And there's this woman selling these screen printed beautiful shirts that look like they have universes on them. And Linda wants to buy one for herself and for her 2 daughters and 2 more for herself. And the woman says, okay, that'll be $200. And I say, and Linda just goes and pulls out Peppy's credit card. And I'm like, no, you got to haggle. She's like, this is Peppy's money. I'm like, okay, man, go ahead, go ahead. So she pays full price, and it's getting to the time Sarah's going to get off of work, so we got to find a place to eat. So we walk through the village, and we find this Indian restaurant, and then we we wait for Sarah. We tell her to meet us there. I call her up, and then we go to Washington Square Park and walk under the archway. And it's still beautiful, but the fountain's not running anymore. And we go sit on a bench, and there's a jazz trio playing. And there's the guy sitting across the way that covers himself in birdseed. And then the pigeons just sit all over him. All over him. And I tell Linda, I say, Linda, I got to tell you something. And my heart's beating in my chest. Sarah's sister had just had a baby, our nephew Logan, and her brother's wife just had a baby, our niece Anna, and there was all this baby fever in the air. And I said, Linda, Sarah and I aren't going to have kids. And I was terrified to tell her this because she's a grandmother and she's a moon goddess, and like there's so much about her that, she wants to be a grandmother, and she looked at me, and with her eyes are so kind, they crinkled up at the corner, and her hair was down and long and thick and blonde and white, brighter than the kindest soul in the world. And she just looked at me and smiled. She said, Pete, it's okay. I never thought you guys would have kids. You guys are supposed to take care of each other. And she just smiled and patted me on the knee, and like all that I've been holding on to just went away. I knew it was okay. So then we met Sarah, and we ate this great Indian food, and Peppy paid for it. And throughout the meal, we were just like, all of us were just doting over Sarah. It was like Sarah was with the two people that love her more in the world, And so I'm walking them back up to Union Square to put them on the end so they can get back up to Madison Square Garden. I'm going to head home and eat all the Halloween candy that we bought. And I'm sitting there on the steps in Union Square, and it's just about to be dusk, and there's people everywhere. It looks like an ant farm. It's completely insane. And I see this guy walk over. He's this tough, tattooed Mexican, like a kitchen, like a sous chef. Like he's got kitchen check pants and like this filthy chef shirt. And he's got this bag, and he puts it down in the middle of everything. He just puts it down, and people in New York, they just, all right, you're in the way, and they just go around him. And I watch him like lift up a blanket, and he digs around, and I see the check pants drop, and I see the chef jacket drop, and I'm thinking about how I just kissed my wife and my mother-in-law goodbye and sent them off at night. Now what's happening with this guy? And then he digs in the bag, and he covers up, and then he drops the blanket, and he's wearing this blue gingham dress, and he reaches in the bag, and he pulls out this brown wig with pigtails and red like big red ribbons, and then reaches in the bag, and he's got a basket with a little dog like sticking out of the basket. He's beautiful. He's so beautiful. And I just see him, and he just like all of a sudden he looks like he's taller, and he looks like he's happier, and he looks like he's going off into having the greatest night that he ever had after my greatest day. And then I just laughed, and I got on the subway. I went home, and I ate all the Rice Krispie treats and the Reese's peanut butter cups. We lost Linda 5 years ago. We buried her. And when I say we, it was me and Logan and Anna and Sarah and her sister and her brother, and we all held the urn, and we lowered it into that little hole in the grave. She was diagnosed with cancer, with liver cancer. She was afraid of Western medicine. She didn't like to go to the doctor. She didn't like to be told that there was anything wrong with her. She didn't trust doctors anyway. And by the time that after the pain was hitting her, that they figured out what it was too late to do anything about it. And 11 months after she got the diagnosis, she was dead. And 2 days before she died, we were up there with her. And I had to go because I had a gig. I had to go to Europe for a thing, and I didn't want to leave her. And I bent down, and she was on the couch, and her eyes were bright yellow, and I said, Linda, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being my friend. I want to thank you for giving me your daughter. And she hugged me, and then I walked outside. And about 20 minutes later, Sarah came out, and she got in the car, and we were heading back to the city, and she told me that the last thing her mother told her was, I love that boy. And she died 2 days later, and then we buried her. You know, the reason why I tell stories, and the reason why I tell this story, is that for that last 10 minutes, when I was telling you about the most beautiful day of my life, Linda was alive. She was alive. And that's because stories are magic.